The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast NH. This is a podcast designed by writers for writers on the journey to being published. Joined Mandra, Biscornet.
It was so healthy and nutritious.
Deborah Monk.
Can we open each podcast with a dance number?
Shelley Devlin.
It was so full of inspiration and sparkles.
Every Tuesday morning live on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to catch the podcast anytime on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast catcher. It's time to be inspired, feel empowered, and be well with the Writer's Block Podcast NH.
And welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Mandra.
I'm Debbie.
And thank you for joining us, where our mission is to inspire, empower, and to help people be well. Well, today is the day, folks. We are talking to New York Times best-selling author Marci Shimoff.
Marci Shimoff is a #1 New York Times best-selling author, a world-renowned transformational teacher, and an expert on happiness, success, and unconditional love. Her books include the runaway bestsellers Happy for No Reason, Love for No Reason, and 6 titles in the phenomenally successful Chicken Soup for the Woman's Soul series. Her books have sold more than 15 million copies worldwide in 33 languages, have topped all of the major bestseller lists, and have been on the New York Times bestseller list for a total of 118 weeks. Marci is one of the best-selling female nonfiction authors of all time. She is also the host of the national PBS television special called Happy for No Reason, is a featured teacher in The Secret, and is the narrator for the award-winning film Happy. Marci currently co-leads a worldwide program called Your Year of Miracles with thousands of participants from 42 countries for living a life of miracles. Marci has inspired millions of people around the world and is dedicated to helping people live more empowered and joy-filled lives. Please join me in welcoming to our show today, Marci Shimoff. Welcome, Marci.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here with you and with everyone who is a writer or an aspiring writer, and looking forward to our conversation.
I've been looking forward to this since I saw you a few weeks ago. I've pretty much been floating on cloud 9 ever since you spoke at Enterprise Bank.
I have Debbie superglued to her chair.
Yes.
Yes, and she is going to fly away today. So I think, Marci, if we could just start with, what advice would you give to some beginning writers?
Well, first of all, I would say congratulations. Congratulations for doing something that will not only, I think, help fulfill your calling if you have a calling to be a writer, but that also will touch other people in profound ways. I think I often ask audiences how many people have been moved or changed in some way by a book, and every person raises their hand. Sure. We all have been moved by a book. I mean, I remember in the 6th grade, one of the first books I ever read that was like eye-opening for me was a book called Siddhartha, and it got me started on my personal growth journey. And in high school, I read Man's Search for Meaning, and it was so powerful. So congratulations, first of all, that you are doing what you feel a calling to do. And my biggest piece of advice would be to write what you feel that you are here to write. I always tell writers, if they're starting a project, to answer these 2 questions. The first question is, who am I here for? And, we're not, some people will say, well, I am here for everybody. And that may be true, but there's specifically an audience of people that you are really, that's your target market, that's your target audience. And so what I ask you to do is to imagine that you are talking to a whole room full of people. And what would they be like? Who would they be? Would they be teenagers? Would they be women? Would they be fathers? Would they be, business people? What age range would they be in general? And so I, for example, know that I am here for women predominantly. That doesn't mean that men don't read my books, but predominantly women, and predominantly what I call the Oprah crowd, women 40 to 70, kind of us.
So
Yes, us.
you get clear on your audience. You get clear on
You
who
get
that's.
really clear on your audience. That's the first question. And then the second question is, what am I here to teach or inspire them in? So what is it specifically that I'm about? Now, I am a nonfiction author, so I don't know if the same process works for fiction authors, but I know for a nonfiction author, what is the bottom line message that I am put on the planet to convey? So, for example, for me, it's really to talk about happiness. I wasn't a happy kid. I grew up with existential angst. I grew up depressed. And so I really have learned the lesson myself about how to be happy. And that's what I'm here to share. A dear friend of mine, Lisa Nichols, has a phrase that I love. Your mess is your message. So most often what it is that we're here to write about is what we have overcome, what has been our mess that has turned into our message.
I'm writing down everything you say, forgetting that I'm going to listen to this. I don't have to write it down.
Jonathan will have it recorded for you.
Yes.
Don't worry.
You're in good hands.
Thank you, Jonathan.
You're most welcome.
But that's great advice, to get clear on two things, on who your audience is and then on what your message is going to be, and let that guide you.
Right.
Yeah, have it really be something that you feel passionate about, because you are going to be married to this subject for years to come. I started writing Happy for No Reason, for example. I started writing it in 1998. It was published in 2008. Now that's a longer curve than most people need. Usually, you can do it in a year or two. But
no, I'm right with you.
and then now it's 2018. It's 10 years after the book's come out, and I'm still speaking about it all the time. So it's really got to be a subject matter, not that you think will be successful necessarily, but what you think is something you care enough about to really be passionately talking about it for 20 years
For a long
or more.
time, yeah.
That's great advice. Boy, I hate to go to the business side. I'm just curious, with all the changes in the publishing world, Marci, what are your thoughts on indie versus traditional?
It's a great question, and I'm asked this question a lot. So I have only been published traditional. I was very fortunate with my Chicken Soup for the Soul books. We worked with a company called Health Communications Inc. out of Florida. We loved them. And then with Happy for No Reason and Love for No Reason, I've worked with Simon & Schuster, whom I've also loved. So I've been very, very fortunate. Here's the big difference. It is very hard to get a publishing contract with a traditional publisher unless you have a platform. Everything, in real estate, it's about location, location, location. In the book world, it's about platform, 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 meaning how big is your reach? A publisher is really only going to take you on if they feel like the book is going to be successful. Publishers are not terribly great marketers for the most part. So it's your job to be the marketer of your book. In either case, whether it's an independent or a traditional publishing. So if you do have a big platform, then you would want to get an agent. An agent is only going to take you on if they think that they're going to be successful in selling the book, because they get a percentage of what the book is sold for. And they're only going to take you on if they think that a traditional publisher will take you on. So if you know you've got a big platform and you know you've got ways that you're going to be able to reach people, if you are going to have an easy time getting on national media or things like that, then go for the traditional publisher, because there's a lot of cachet that goes along with it. They can certainly help you more in getting national media. My publisher was relentless about getting me on the Today Show, and they were very successful in that. That's not a guarantee just because you go with a New York publisher that they'll get you national media. So it really depends on what position you're in right now, and also what is your goal. If you want to get the book out there quickly, if you want it to reach a lot of people, and if you want to have a lot of control over the contents of that book, then you want to go independent. It takes a traditional publisher much longer to get the book out. They're going to have more say in things like your title and your cover and your content and all. So if you just want to get it out there and be independent yourself, independent, they call that now hybrid publishing, is a great route where you might pay a publisher $5,000 to $10,000 to get your book out there, and you in turn get some copies of it. That's a wonderful way if you're a newer author or if you don't have a big platform.
So interesting. It's just kind of curious, since if you have to do the marketing yourself either way, I would think if you already had a big platform that it would, common sense would say, well, you're going to have to do the work. You already have the platform. Do a self-publishing or indie publishing. I guess that's the current.
Yes, there are some, and many people have gone that way. I think Tim Ferriss, for example, wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, hugely successful. And I believe he's gone to self-publishing now because of that. It is harder to get on the New York Times bestseller list if you are going independent publishing. There are some nice advantages to a traditional publisher. I think it's easier to get foreign rights, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not a complete expert because I've never done the independent publishing route.
Well, so, you're Marci Shimoff. You don't have to. They're coming after you.
Well, and that's just been a big thing lately anyway, that it has gotten much easier with Amazon and other things to be self-published.
Right. I don't know that, I don't know when that started, but anyway, that's a whole nother show.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a whole different universe now than when my first book came out in 1996. And let me tell you, it was a different world then. I mean, I was traipsing around the country on book tours and, really it was quite grueling. Now you do virtual book tours. Now the way that you get your word out there is through podcasts like this and through all kinds of
social media
stuff.
It's
a lot easier to do in your in your pajamas, unless you're on video.
Yes, you look lovely.
So Marci, I want to go back to something that you said in the beginning about how everyone's been moved by a book in their life. And specifically for me, it was The Secret. And I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about your experience working on The Secret and, working together with the other authors.
Yes, and I think we should tell Marci. Marci doesn't know that Mandra's writing a book called Just Another Love Story about her husband's heart transplant. And in her book, long before we knew, we all knew of your books, but before we knew you were coming to our town to speak, we had been critiquing her pages that were talking about literally The Secret was her Bible in the hospital.
Oh, it was. Like if you saw my copy, it is falling apart because we ended up living in the hospital for 6 months. There were all sorts of complications and whatnot with the transplant, and that was my Bible and went everywhere I went. So for me to have you on the podcast is really special. So if you could talk a little bit more about that'd be great.
I have to tell you, first of all, I got goosebumps. I call them God bumps. At your story. So thank you for sharing that. That is the ultimate reward of being an author, is hearing people say that something that you've written or something you've contributed to, like The Secret, has made a difference in their life. I can tell you, I remember the very first time somebody walked up to me at a speech when I was doing a book signing. At the end of the speech, and they were crying, and I could see, it was a long line. I could see about 5 or 6 people behind who I was signing for. This woman just sobbing, and I thought, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And by the time she got up to me, she said, Marci, you saved my life. Your book, she said I was suicidal, and I read your book, and I realized that life is worth living. Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing more
gratifying
than hearing the power that your words have. So I just want you all who are writing a book to remember in those dark hours when you're thinking, I can't do this. Oh my God, what am I going to, and believe me, I don't know any author who hasn't had those moments, to remember on the other side what happens is people like what you just said, share. So, the interesting thing about the Secret was that I was at a meeting of a group that I'm a part of called the Transformational Leadership Council. And it's a group of 100 transformational leaders. It was founded by Jack Canfield, who is my mentor and the originator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And this woman, Rhonda Byrne, whom none of us had heard of, came to our meeting and told us about this film she was working on called The Secret. And she wanted to interview us. And honestly, we thought nothing of it. Okay, she brought a makeup person and a hair person and camera people, and we thought, okay, we'll do these interviews. So she interviewed a number of us, and many of us ended up being in the movie. So to be honest, we didn't think about it. I forgot about it for the next year and a half. Wow. And then the movie came out, and all of a sudden was just this phenomenon. And I've been now traveling around the world for the last 10, 12 years since it came out, talking to audiences in Russia and China, in India, all throughout Europe and South America, all being united around this message that the movie and the book, The Secret, have the message of the law of attraction, that our thoughts and our feelings and our actions attract to us based on the energetic vibration. We attract to us a match.
Yeah.
So
wow,
that was a great project to be part of. And I will say this, that had I not written my earlier books, I wouldn't have been invited to be part of the Transformational Leadership Council, and I wouldn't have been invited to be part of The Secret. So you don't ever know where something's going to land you.
Sure.
You just follow the breadcrumbs and you do what you feel moved to do right now, whatever project is inspiring or moving you.
That's great.
Oh, gosh. Now I don't know. Do I go to my next question or my next question?
Well, I have to tell you, I want to give one really practical piece of advice. I don't know how much time we have, but I want to make sure I get this practical piece of advice in. Is that okay?
Please, yes.
Okay. So people always ask me, how do I organize my thoughts? How do you get organized for your content for a book? Because it's so overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And I have a very, very, very sophisticated, high-tech strategy that I use that I would love to share with all of you. And it's very, very high-tech, but it is called the Post-it technique.
That's Deb.
I'm the queen of Post-its.
She comes to meetings with a rainbow of Post-it
This is the size Post-its I use. Here are these Post-its.
Oh, no, Marci, you need some of my custom Post-its. Don't worry, I'll send you some.
Okay. Well, here's what you want to do. If you are writing a nonfiction kind of a self-help book, so this is, I don't know how this would apply to other books, but I'm sure you could adapt it. You get 5 different colored sets of Post-its.
Okay.
And there are 5 main elements of a self-help kind of a book. There are the ideas or the principles, number 1. There are your stories, number 2. Number 3, other people's stories. Number 4, the practical techniques or tools that you're going to be sharing with people. And number 5, optional, is quotes and cartoons and, those kinds of extra supplementary things. You take 1 color Post-it for each of those 5 areas. So let's say purple is for your ideas or principles. Yellow is for your stories. Blue is for other people's stories. Pink is for the practical techniques and that you're going to share. And then green is for quotes and cartoons and supplementary material. And as you're collecting your material for the book, you put 1 idea per Post-it on the appropriate colored Post-it. So let's say I have an idea and maybe it relates to something out of XYZ book. So I'll say happiness set point on a purple Post-it, and then I'll put Rick Hansen book, Buddha's Brain book, page 30. And so 1 idea per Post-it.
Okay.
And then you get big Post-it paper, like flip chart paper, but the Post-it kind. And you put however many chapters you have, you will put 1 big Post-it around the room for each chapter. And you put, chapter 1, or whatever it is.
Right.
And you identify each chapter. Then you go around the room and you start putting the different colored Post-its on each of the big Post-its. And you start seeing, oh, wow, this story goes with this piece of research or this piece of information or this technique. And you start seeing where you have gaps.
Right.
If you have no yellow Post-its, you got to get some yellow Post-its in there, because you got to have your stories, other people's stories. I forgot research is also on those last Post-its, go with supporting material. So that's the way that I organize.
What a great
book.
visual to see where you're lacking information and where you're lacking ideas and
where you're overweighted.
Yeah.
And I leave those up for the entire time that I'm working on the book. And what's so great, of course, about Post-its is that you can change them. You go, oh, no, you know what? This idea goes better over here.
Right.
So that's my sophisticated Post-it technique.
We need to tell Shelley that, because that's exactly what she needs to do for her book. Yeah.
I think it's my turn to ask a question.
I think it's your turn, and that might be our last question, Deb.
Okay. Marci, I just have to tell you, after 2 days after I saw you, you gave me a gift that was literally mind-blowing to me. I was walking right by my couch, which I've walked by a million times, and all of a sudden, I heard silence. And I have never heard silence inside my head like that before. And it only lasted about 2 seconds. And the first, what struck me, what stunned me, was how loud silence is. And then what happened is I was a little bit uncomfortable after 2 seconds, and I put the country music channel on my TV, and I didn't give it another thought. I didn't realize what was happening. The next day it happened again, and I was a little bit more prepared, and I wasn't as afraid or uncomfortable. And so it went for 3 seconds, and I could hear my dog barking, but it was outside of my head. Inside of my head, there was silence. And it just made me realize that the cacophony of thoughts that I normally have are just a mind exercise. And I would never exercise on my treadmill 24/7, and yet that's what's going on in my head. The problem is I haven't been able to do it again. So what do I do, Marci? Help me.
Yeah, it's called practice. So all of my any idea for a book that I've ever had has come out of me being in silence. When I first came up with the idea of Chicken Soup for the Woman's Soul, a friend dragged me along with her to a 7-day silent meditation retreat. I thought, oh God, I can't do 7 days of silence. But she was very persuasive, and I did. And on the 4th day, in the middle of a meditation, I saw the words Chicken Soup for the Woman's Soul. And I knew that's what I was supposed to do. There was only one problem. I just had the great epiphany of my life, and I had 3 more days of silence.
And you couldn't tell anyone.
And you don't have to do 7 days of silence, but I believe that all creativity stems from us being in touch with our inner source of creativity, which is our spirit, our soul, which we connect to through silence. So it's not like you're going to push away thoughts, but I would say dedicate at least 5 or 10 minutes every day to just sitting quietly. And if you have a meditation practice, great. If you don't, just put your attention on your heart and focus on your breathing. Imagine that you're breathing in and out of your heart. And don't worry that there's thoughts there. Don't try to get rid of the thoughts, but just focus on the heart. And over time, you will become more and more silent. And that is the reservoir of all great creativity.
See, I thought it meant I was supposed to stalk you. And see you every 48 hours, and then I would get the 2 minutes of silence.
No, Deb, because the gift is that you can learn to do it yourself. You have to just practice that.
All right, I will try.
But
it was just, there are no words. It was phenomenal. It's never happened to me before. I felt like Michael Singer from The Untethered Soul.
Oh yes, one of my favorite books. By the way.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for that.
Michael Singer spent a lot of time practicing. And what I mean by practicing is just dedicating 10 minutes a day to silence or meditation. You know, Marianne Williamson, who's a dear friend of mine and also a great author, her book, A Return to Love, many years ago was huge for me. She says, you wouldn't think of going through a day without taking a shower or a bath in the morning. Well, in the same way, we need to take a spiritual, a cleanse for our soul every day. So 10 minutes of silence.
Oh, I like that. A spiritual bath, because actually I don't shower every day. I try not to when I can. Spiritual bath. That's beautiful.
That is.
Yeah.
That is.
You ever think maybe you share a little too much, Deb?
Oh.
Your mic was on.
She never thinks that.
I forget.
You know what? I want to say one thing about that. That is the other thing about being a great writer. Be authentic. Be yourself. Share yourself openly.
Yeah.
Be who you are, because that's the gift that you are meant to be. So I love that you're just openly sharing. An open book.
Amen, sister.
Yes. Marci, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And we have, Deb, if you want to, you can let people know where they can find Marci, and we'll put all that up on our Facebook page. But it was such an honor to have you as a guest. Thank you so much.
You can find Marci at happyfornoreason.com.
Great.
Of course, I have her.
Happyfornoreason.com, and I've got a really wonderful little free workbook there for you on how to become happier. So grab that, and you are wonderful. I really loved getting to talk with both of you. And my last words are to everybody who's writing: congratulations and thank you. Really, it's a gift to the world.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marci.
Thank you, Marci.
Is that it?
Oh.
Are we wrapping up?
We're wrapping
We're all
up.
looking at you. We didn't know.
Thank you for listening, and please check out the Writer's Block NH Facebook and our podcast. May you be inspired, feel empowered, and be well.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.